Hi everyone, we've got a special guest along today for the lecture, Jason Cooper, who was an Australian swimming representative and who's gone on to into swimming coaching, and he's volunteered his time today for me to have an interview with him and share some of his coaching insights. So I hope you enjoy this, and I hope you've got your speakers on in the computer room. Okay, Jason, I just wanted to start off with, I thought that you could tell the students a little bit about your current coaching role, the age group of swimmers, as well as your previous roles.
Yeah, Jen, I currently work in Melbourne at Wellbeing School, which is a girls' school. I'm the director of swimming there, so I oversee the program from learn to swim through to swimmers competing at a national open level. Prior to that, I worked at a boys' school on the Gold Coast for about 7 or 8 years doing a similar type of role. And prior to that, I worked in another boys' school for about 5 years, which was a much smaller program that was out of Ipswich in Queensland. And doing similar types of things, but the program was a little bit smaller. And prior to that, I was still pretty much swimming. So I've been coaching in a school environment for probably now 15 years. So I've had to gain some experience in managing a swim program within a school, which is a little bit different to running a normal club program.
Okay. So you've answered question 2, which is how long you've been a coach for. 15 years, that's quite a long time. And as I said, that you had a huge background as an athlete yourself in the sport. How did you move into coaching, and what sort of qualifications did you get to be able to move into that?
Well, I first started coaching when I was still swimming, so I started doing a little bit of learn to swim. And I did my learn to swim qualifications when I was 16, 17, and did a little bit of private coaching and things like that when I was still competing. I then did a little bit of assistant coaching in a couple of different programs, Yeronga Park in Queensland. I spent some time there, and with Acacia, with Mr. Lakefield, doing some assistant coaching. And during that time, I then did what was level 1. They've changed a lot of the licenses around now, but I did my level 1 coaching. And so I was sort of in my early 20s at that stage, and I was starting to do some coaching in some school programs and some club programs. And then I just went on to do my level 2 coaching, which was a combination of a sort of a part-time uni course, and also then you got credit for the level of swimmers that you coached. And that now converts to what's considered a silver licensed coach. And along the way also just doing a few little courses and making sure that my CPR and all that sort of stuff keeps current and up to date.
Okay, and to date, so you've been coaching for 15 years, what do you feel like your most predominant coaching achievement would be? It doesn't have to be totally performance related, it could be anything, but I was just wondering in your own mind, what would be your most predominant coaching achievement?
Well, when I was at TSS, I developed a program from, when I walked in there, I had one swimmer turn up to training. And they had no club and they had no real swimming background. So in the period of time that I was there, I built a club, built a learn to swim program. We won the GPS swimming competition for the first time in that school's history in something like 70 odd years. And we developed a club that finished in the top 10 in Queensland in a very short period of time. So to me that was a fairly big achievement to sort of get that program in place. And that's sort of from a just basic coaching point of view as opposed to my philosophy as a coach. Okay.
I think I've got the philosophy I do have philosophy later on, but we'll move on to that later on because we just covered last week in our lecture about developing a coaching philosophy and how it's quite complex, so we'll just leave your philosophy for now. But one of... and obviously that's a really good achievement in my eyes as well, so I wanted to congratulate you on that. But one of the issues that comes out a lot in research and texts and things like that is that parents can be quite influential to your role as a coach. I was just wondering how personally do you handle parents that might have an issue with the way that you're coaching or the way their child is performing?
Parents are probably, as a coach, the number one problem that we face. It's always the joke you hear that you'd love to coach in an orphanage because that would be the easiest place to have to work. To be honest, I've changed the way I deal with parents as I've gotten older and also as I've become a parent myself. I think you get a bit of a better understanding and a bit more insight into what parents are going through. I try to keep my parents a little bit distant. In my early days of coaching, when I was sort of in my early 20s, I did allow myself to get probably a little bit too close to families. And that has its benefits and disadvantages, but ultimately the parents want to see the best for their kids, and that's the thing you have to remember as coaches, that's all they want. Some parents go about that in what's considered to be a normal way, and some parents go about that in quite aggressively. So I try and handle them individually if I can, try and give them as much information as you can up front, but keep that distance so that they know that they can't just walk in on you at any time and talk to you. You want to try and make it so that they've got certain times that they can spend with you. I try and encourage them to email me more often than anything else, because at least then I can respond in a timely manner, and also if it's something that's confrontational, I've got the chance to really think about how I want to address it. Yeah. And then you can follow up with phone calls and face-to-face meetings as well.
Well, I have the same philosophy when dealing with students, Jason. The next question, and I think it's particularly pertinent at the moment because we've got the Olympics on, and particularly last week, and it was probably more the media that portrayed this than the actual swimmers. But I suppose we did see it in interviews. We saw a lot of disappointed swimmers that came out after their swim. So how do you handle it if your swimmers do not perform to their expectation?
Again, that's another issue that's fairly common. Sometimes the swimmer's expectation and where they're actually at can be a little bit too far apart. So as a coach, hopefully we can address that before the competition, so we don't have their expectation levels too high or too low. But I generally try and get them to focus on the positive outcomes of what they've done. It's very rare that a swimmer will do something that is a total failure. Swimming, unfortunately, is a sport that is measured purely on time. So most sports you can go out and play a game and have a good time. You can play basketball, you can have a goodish game, you can have a baddish game. But it's very hard to really nail it down and measure it to say that wasn't good enough. With swimming, you step up on the box and you're fully exposed. If your best time is 50 seconds and you swim 50.2, well, it stares there in front of you that you haven't done your best. And unfortunately, that's all that tends to be focused on by the media, by coaches as well, parents and swimmers. Yeah. So I try and get them to focus on the process of what they're doing. And I'll even say to them, look, if you were within 1% of your best time today, anything else in life, anything at all, if you were within 1% of your absolute best at any stage, would you be satisfied? And the answer most of the time is, yeah, I would be. And it's like, well, why are you so dissatisfied with this now to be so close to your best? But it's very hard to sell that to an athlete sometimes. But that's basically what I try and do if the performance is a little bit less than standard. On the other hand, if it's less than standard because they haven't done the right thing in the lead-up, I think they need to be made aware of that as well. But there's a time and a place, and it's normally not straight after a race. It's normally in the sort of debrief afterwards when you sit down and reflect and say, okay, we didn't have a great meet. You've only trained twice a week for the last 6 months. What do you expect? Yeah.
Now, this is quite a complex question, and I'm not sure how you're going to go answering it in an interview that's over the phone, but do you have a coaching philosophy? And if so, what are some of the core tenets of your philosophy that you could share with us?
Yeah. My coaching philosophy was fairly heavily influenced by the coaches that I dealt with as a swimmer. Probably the number one thing that I believe in is that I'm coaching people, I'm not just coaching an athlete. So I look at each of them as individuals, and I also acknowledge that probably 99.9% of the swimmers that I coach, they're people, they're not swimmers. They're not going to go on to be an elite level athlete. So I have high expectations of them, but I also have high expectations of them as people, and hope that my influence on them is positive over their entire life rather than just flog them to death to get a result in the pool. I spoke to a parent actually yesterday of a swimmer I coached probably 4 or 5 years ago, a boy, and the mother was telling me that he regularly talks of the positive influence that I've been on him and his outlook on life and all that sort of thing. And they're the sort of things that I really want to value in my coaching. I'd rather think that I've been a positive influence on people, invited to people's weddings and to that sort of stuff after they finish swimming, rather than the sort of coach where they look back and go, gee, I hate swimming and I wish I'd never done it. So that's, I don't know if it answers the question, but that's kind of how I like to approach my general outlook on coaching. Swimming's a very tough sport. It requires a lot of training for a fairly small reward at the end of the day. So I think there's got to be a lot more to it than just get in, swim hard, swim fast, or go home.
Yeah.
That's still an important part of what we do when we train, and we do work on that, but it's not the most important part.
It's so good to hear that, because we've just covered about treating athletes as objects of performance, and that we need to be catering for, in our coaching, for social, emotional, mental well-being and not just the physical. So you really addressed that in just what you just said, so that's good. So you just said that your philosophy that you adopted some of the core tenets from some of the coaches that you experienced in your own athletic career. But can you think of just like a specific incident, or not an incident as such, as a story that you could share with us when you're an Australian swimmer and you encountered a positive coaching experience?
Yes. The negative ones might be easier to come up with. But one of the coaches that I had some great coaches over my lifetime for a variety of reasons. My probably first major coach, I'm going to name names or not?
No.
My first major coach had an assistant coach as well.
Yep.
And the assistant coach was a very, very big influence on me longer term, particularly on the social side of things and the way he dealt with us. As I've gotten older, I've appreciated a little bit more the style of the senior coach at the time. As a 17, 18-year-old male who knew everything, I butted heads with that coach quite a lot. And that in itself has taught me a lot, because it's given me a bit of an understanding of how teenagers think. When I look back and think, well, the problem wasn't necessarily me, the problem wasn't necessarily the coach, it was the fact that the two of us didn't get it right, and the coach's mentality was kind of a little bit my way or the highway, old school. Yeah. And my mentality was, hold on a minute, I'm a 17-year-old male that knows everything, so what do you know, you're just old and whatnot. I look back now and reflect and think, if only that coach had a little bit better communication skills and understanding, possibly I may have had a better outcome as an athlete as well. The assistant coach did a really good job of bridging the two. He generally, I would say, has probably been the most positive influence on my life in general. And I model a lot of what I do based on that. Yeah, that's good. So, I might swap around the questions here. So I'm going to go to question 10 then go back to question 9. So this week
some of the students put some online posts. They did a blog online, and they were talking about the unmotivated athlete. And some of them said that their coach had dealt with the unmotivated athlete by offering an extrinsic reward, such as something fun at the end of the session or some sort of material object.
Yep.
Personally, I think that motivation needs to come from within, but I just wondered how you handle an unmotivated athlete.
Unmotivated athletes can be really difficult to handle. I agree that ultimately a successful athlete will be the athlete that's motivated from within. There's only so long as a coach that we can motivate an athlete that's not motivated themselves, and sometimes that can be really draining. So if we as a coach have to continually provide the stimulus to motivate them, and probably the older I'm getting, the more I'm realising this. When I was a young coach, I didn't probably think this as much, but now I'm seeing from experience it happen over and over and over again. You just can't continually motivate them. They've at some point got to have that self-motivation. Within my own program, I try to provide those sorts of things that are fun and enjoyable for them to keep them motivated. But I'm also, and just recently I've had one of swimmers sort of finish an age nationals, not really at the level they want to be, 14, 15 years of age, at that common age where they start to think about giving up.
Yeah.
I've had chats to them about the fact that, look, I value them as a person, I value them as an individual. I don't really care if they want to swim or not. That doesn't bother me, because most of them are at a stage where they are starting to say, I can see they don't want to swim anymore. Mum and Dad are still pushing them to swim. They still want to swim in the sense that that's all they see themselves as a swimmer. They don't see themselves as anything else in life, so they're torn, but they don't want to do all the hard work. So I'd sit down with them and say, look, it doesn't bother me if you don't want to keep swimming. I'm not going to like you any less.
Yeah.
Or think any less of you. But let's get what's right for you going, and offer them jobs as part-time learner swim teachers. Try and keep them involved in the sport as much as I can. But ultimately, when their motivation is no longer there, it doesn't really matter what I do.
Yeah.
All we can do then is support the athlete and try and give them some other options.
Yeah.
But we started this. I only do it for 4 weeks of the year, but I do a thing what I call Fast League with my team. So last night we had 42 swimmers broken up into teams of 7 or 8. And we do fun events like we do underwater swimming, we do 125-metre races, we do relays, and it's a spread of kids from 10 to about 19 in years of age, and I give bonus points that we themed it on the Olympics this year, so they had to pick a country, come dressed as cheering, all that sort of stuff. So from a coaching point of view, it achieves very little.
Yeah.
But from a motivational point of view, it's something that they look forward to and they enjoy, and hopefully that flows over into the rest of their training.
Yeah, good answer. So, from when we were swimming, Jason, we had no voice or control over our training, and that the coaches were the bearer of all knowledge and we were the receivers. Do your swimmers have any voice or control over their training or sets that have been chosen?
They have a little bit, and I think it's important that they think they have more control than they actually do. So I think that the skill of a coach is allowing your athlete to believe that they've got a lot of control on what they're doing. And as a coach, maintaining the control that we need to be able to control, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, again, I look back on myself, I didn't know as much as my coach knew, even though I thought I knew more. But what I needed was to be felt as if I was being heard, and as if I had a say, and I didn't have that. So I try to allow them to have a viewpoint and to have a say and to listen to what they've got to say and possibly adjust or tinker. And an example being my strength and conditioning program. I've got a strength and conditioning coach who takes the program. He's coached about 18 to 20 Olympic level athletes across a variety of sports. He's doing his doctorate at the moment in muscle something or other. I couldn't tell you exactly what it is.
Yep.
Very knowledgeable, very experienced. He's a bit laid back, a bit casual, and he's involved quite heavily with kayaking.
Yeah.
My swimming program, for whatever reason, had decided that they didn't think he had enough knowledge to coach them. But an ex-swimmer who's about 20 years of age who helps in the gym had started to make them believe that they knew more than he did. So they were believing in him, believing in the ex-swimmer, not believing in my strength coach. And the strength program was starting to suffer. So we had to pull them all into a room, had to outline, we listened to their views. We got them to write down some questions and some concerns. We got them all into a room and we put forward, this is what we're going to do. We've listened to you. We're going to make some changes in the program, but this is what's going to happen. From this point on, you guys now have to keep a log online of what you're doing in the gym. So we sort of did a little bit of a carrot and a stick with them.
Yeah.
We've listened. We're going to make changes. But this isn't just all about us. This is about you as well. You're saying that you don't think we push you hard enough in the gym. Well, we've got reasons for why we haven't been doing that, because you haven't been turning up to the gym regularly, you haven't been doing this and whatnot. But you've got to take some responsibility as well. So gym will start at 4:30. It used to go from 4 to 6 to allow them flexibility, but they were abusing that flexibility, so we changed it. From 4:30 to 5:30, you must be in the gym.
Yeah.
No exceptions. So we sort of, again, we used the carrot and stick, so they felt like they'd been listened to, but ultimately we put in place something that we thought was going to be better, and we've been doing it for the last 2 weeks, and we've seen a vast improvement in their attitude and a vast improvement in what we're getting out of the gym. It's not necessarily the best strength program, and we decided that. The strength coach and I said, you know what, this isn't going to be the best outcomes for us in the strength program, but what we need to do is change the culture at the moment and the belief in what they're doing so that we can get better outcomes.
Good. In the news this week, particularly after the success of the USA swim team, I don't know if you saw this article about the team environment and how it dramatically changed in the US swim team.
Yep.
Obviously it plays an important part to success. How do you foster a team environment in your squad?
Well, the little fast league thing that I spoke about earlier helps to do that.
Yep.
I'm fortunate that in the club I'm currently in, when I arrived, they had a fairly good team ethic amongst the group. So it was sort of already there. At TSS, when I arrived, the schoolboy program that they were involved in, the GPS program, is all about team. So it's really important that you build a team through that. And we used to do a lot of things by getting the group together. So we would go away on Friday nights to meet. We would encourage everybody in the team to come along, the best swimmer and the worst swimmer. We would do a lot of activities that revolved around getting to know each other's names, making sure the coaching staff knew everybody, taking an interest in each of the athletes. I try in my coaching to always talk to the athletes about how they are, what they're doing, who they are, and try and get them to interact as well. So when a new athlete comes into the squad or the program, you make them interact. You put them in lanes with other people, and you actually say, have you spoken to so-and-so? Do you know who this is? Make them ask each other questions. So I think you've got to work hard on that sometimes to keep it going. It doesn't just happen naturally, but if you can get that team atmosphere going within your group, it also helps to get the motivation levels up, which was one of the other questions from earlier. How do we get it going? And I think team can really make a big difference.
That's right. So I've got 2 to go. Sorry, it's dragging on. It's not really dragging on. You're offering very insightful information, but it's a lot of questions for me to fire at you. So do you consider the social emotional well-being of the athlete important? And I suppose you've already answered this a little bit. If so, how do you cater for it? You said that you get to know them on the individual level.
Yep, I do. An example being, at the moment, my national age program has about 20 or 22 kids in it at the moment, and about 7 of them are in Year 12. And one of the things that I found really difficult to adjust to when I moved from Queensland to Victoria is that the emphasis on Year 11 and 12 in Melbourne is far, far, far greater than what it is in Queensland. And I was used to athletes, if they were good swimmers in Year 11 or 12, just, they would put their schoolwork around their swimming. In Melbourne, it's entirely different. So I've got talented, good swimmers who are missing training all the time because of their schoolwork. So I've had to just adjust the way I deal with them and that, and I'm trying to get them to communicate with me regularly. Not coming training on a Monday this week because I've got what they call a SAC, which is some exam thing that counts towards their end-of-year results. And they seem to have an endless number of these things going on. So I have to adjust what I'm doing within the group to deal with that. And when you're dealing with teenagers from once they hit that 13, anywhere between 13, 17 and 18, there's a lot going on. So you have girlfriend, boyfriend problems, you've got just social interaction problems within the squad. And if you don't keep a bit of a handle on it, you can end up with all sorts of problems. So I try to be involved with that. Again, you've got to keep your distance so that you don't get too close to any individual athletes. But it's important that you can see if someone's struggling with something, that you at least give them the opportunity to talk to you about it.
That's good, because I can remember when I was swimming that I often was with the coach more than I was with my parents, and felt that I could talk to my coach better than I could talk to my parents. So I think it is important to have that relationship with your athletes, especially when sometimes you're with them 5 or 6 hours a day.
Yes, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So just to finish off with, what are your goals, and are they short-term and long-term?
It's funny, when I got interviewed for this job I'm currently in, I didn't conduct an interview like I normally would. I've told the people on the panel that swimming was a boring sport, that we expect kids to train a huge amount of hours, that I, as a coach, if they were looking for somebody that wanted to say that they'd coached several Olympians, that wasn't going to be me. If I got to the end of my coaching career and I hadn't coached a single Olympian, but I'd been to 6 weddings and seen the birth of kids, been invited back to kids' parties, all that sort of thing, I would have seen myself as being a successful coach. And I still have that view long term. I feel I have the ability to coach athletes to whatever level that they should want to go to, but I'm not going to coach athletes with the philosophy of, if you want to swim with me, you've got to have an Olympic attitude, because that's just not the way I think it's going to be. I think if a kid walks through the door who's good enough, who has the desire and has the motivation and everything lines up, yes, I can take them to be whatever they want to be, but the reality is that most of the kids I coach aren't going to be like that. So my goals are about hopefully trying to get these kids to be the best they can possibly be, and hopefully get them to go on with their life, having had a positive experience in swimming, having achieved as good as they can. And if I come across an athlete who I think can do something better, and hopefully giving them the inspiration to try to go further.
That's good.
It's not to be the head coach of Swimming Australia at the moment, I can assure you of that.
Okay. Well, there might be a job there, but doesn't sound like that you want to do it.
No.
So we're going to stop the interview there, Jace, but don't hang up on me, but I'm going to stop the recording. So thank you so much for sharing your experiences with the students. I'm sure they're going to get some valuable insight